Hi, I'm Blaine Mathieu, host and moderator of the upcoming Post-Industrial Summit 2026 on the topic of autonomous organizations enabled by AI agents. This is one of a series of interviews I'm doing with a wide range of domain experts who will be speaking at the summit. To learn more about this event and about the Post-Industrial Institute, please see the links nearby this video. With me today is Tatyana Mamut, CEO of Wayfound. Tatyana is a technology innovator with a passion for humanity. She's had an incredible career spanning gigs at Pendo, Nextdoor, AWS, Salesforce, and IDEO, just to name a few. Her company Wayfound is focused on automating AI agent monitoring to improve their performance. And Tatyana is also a speaker and panelist at the upcoming Post-Industrial Summit. Welcome, Tatyana, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, as you know, the summit you're speaking at in February is focused on the topic of using agentic AI to enable autonomous organizations. Now, before we get to the state of AI agents today, take us through your backstory a bit and tell us how a PhD in anthropology has become a tech leader in this new space.
Yeah, a little bit of background just to understand where I'm coming from. I am the black sheep in the family because everyone else is an engineer. My mother, my father, my grandmother, my brother, my aunt, everybody. And so I grew up in a highly technical family. They're also innovators. Like my father has a bunch of awards for inventing computer animation in different parts of the world. And so thinking about, and my grandmother as well, actually. And so thinking about the future of technology has always been part of my upbringing. Now, the reason I was the black sheep is because I loved the human side, the social science of technology adoption more than the, taking apart the TV and then putting it back together, which my father made me do when I was 7 years old, by the way, because he thought it would be so much fun for me. So I have always been thinking about what is the next evolution of technology and what does that mean for human society? And it just so happens that a lot of big tech companies have found that to be very, very useful in their product leadership function and their product management team, because the hard part of technology isn't really the technology, especially with cloud services now and with AI agent coders and those types of things. It's getting easier and easier. The hard part is knowing what to build that people will love and adopt, and how to get people to really use your product, and how to fit in with their mental models and their everyday habits to make your product actually grow and to build the market. So those elements of my background, alongside with all the engineering fluency that I fortunately had from my family, really helped me build this career. And ever since I've seen, and when I first used ChatGPT in 2022, I dropped everything, quit my cushy job and said, I have to work with this technology. And that's how Wayfound was founded, was because I think a lot of us really saw the magic of this technology and what it was going to mean for the world. And so I just had to do this full time.
Great story, and almost the opposite of mine. I came from a family of lawyers, and I was the one who did take apart the TV, same as you, but not because my parents asked me to. They had no idea. I just dove into it, but we ended up in a similar place somehow.
That's really funny.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So the overall context for what we're talking about today is this notion of agentic AI, and almost every discussion about agents in the last 6 months has started with the question, how do you define what an agent is?
Yeah.
It's where I think we're almost past having to define that, but maybe for the wide audience we've got listening, I'd love your definition.
Yeah, well, I love how Dario Amodei and Mark Benioff talk about them, which is as digital employees or virtual colleagues. And so they are not, the fundamental mental framework is not as software systems. It's more like a virtual colleague or a digital employee. And so what that means is the fundamental and basic level of definition of an agent versus software is that an AI agent is a system that makes its own decision about what to do, either what to say if it's a chatbot agent, or what the next action to take if it is connected to systems where it can actually take actions and complete actions on its own. But the most important thing is that it is deciding with its LLM brain not based on pre-programmed logic by the brains of software engineers. So that's the most important distinction, or the most important way of understanding what is an agent versus not. If there's pre-programmed logic, not an agent. If there is no program logic and the agent has to make its own decision about what to do, it's an agent.
Makes sense. Now, could you think of this as being a continuum, though, between 100% autonomous, never get any direction from anyone agents versus pure deterministic software systems? Is it a continuum?
That's like asking, is it a continuum when you think about employees, about how autonomous employees need to be, right? So some employees are very autonomous, right? We hire executives that can make all kinds of decisions on their own. And some employees, like interns, are not very autonomous, right? We tell them exactly what to do while we train them. So it's exactly the same thing with AI agents. And of course, one of the things that we'll be talking about in this summit is to take these intern level employees that right now need a lot of scaffolding, a lot of buttresses, a lot of new context, a lot of guardrails, right? And how do we create the methods, the systems, and all the training that they need to become more and more autonomous, to become those executive level functioning agents that we now entrust with the high level decisions in our organization.
Well, that's probably a great step directly into Wayfound, because what you're doing with your company is just 100% on the topic today. Tell me about the initial premise behind starting Wayfound.
So my co-founder and I, Chad and I, got together, and we had worked together at Pendo. And we're both super excited about ChatGPT. And as soon as the OpenAI APIs became available, he started building with them. Our first idea was to build a vertical AI agent that we could sell. We always had the idea of how to make this technology, how to make AI agents, which we knew were coming even back in 2023. We knew AI agents were coming from just even seeing how chatbots were working. But how to make those more reliable and more interpretable for regular business users. And by the way, why regular business users? Because they're the subject matter experts, right, on how AI agents are actually supposed to make these decisions. So we first built one. So we were going to go to market with one AI agent. Supervising that agent was immediately very hard, because what I had in my brain about how it should respond was very different than how the agent was responding a lot of the time. And I would sit there and say, Chad, this is producing slop. And he, as an engineer, would look at it and say, well, I think this answer is fine. And I'm like, yes, but I'm the expert on what the answer should be. And I'm telling you this is slop. So all of a sudden we realized, right, that the knowledge, the context about what good looks like actually lives in the business users' heads. But the only people who could actually access the systems were the engineers. So we needed to build a supervisor, which is a separate agent, which can interact with the business users, which interprets the engineering, the open telemetry, all the data, all the signals around what the agent is doing, interprets it from the business users, takes feedback from the business users, learns what good looks like, and then retrains the agents themselves. So closes the loop, right? So that's how we came up with Wayfound. And we were sort of, shouting in the woods for 2 years through 2024 and 2025. So we're really excited that now it feels like finally people have understood. Now we do have great customers that we onboarded in 2024 and 2025. It's not like we were, not had any customers, but, just now it is context graphs and this understanding of like, hey, AI agents need to learn context has exploded. So we're really excited that we're now part of a community talking about this.
Okay, so first let's get to context graphs in a second, but first on the idea of supervisors. So what you're saying is we've gone from thinking of agents as just like individual contributors in an organization that you set on a task and they come back, but you have to have the managerial oversight level as well to make sure the agents are actually doing the right thing appropriately, not producing slop, as you said. Do I have that right fundamentally?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And the way that companies started solving this in 2024 and 2025 was to put human in the loop systems to manage AI agents, right? So an AI agent couldn't actually ship anything that it decided without a human in the loop approving or disapproving.
Right.
Huge problem with that. Humans don't work as fast as AI agents, and human oversight doesn't scale. Human in the loop just does not scale. And by the way, there's another problem with that, which is after the first 15, 180 or 3,000 times that a human has approved something, how close do you think they're looking at the 3,001st time when there actually might be a terrible violation? Right? Humans are just like, oh, this system works. I'm just going to approve, especially as the agents are working at higher and higher scale. So human in the loop doesn't work. So the only way to solve that problem and to manage AI agents at scale reliably, where the same level of, attention is given to the first AI agent, session as to the 3,001st one is to have an AI supervisor, right? Because it doesn't lose attention.
Makes perfect sense. So you raised the concept of context already, and that also is really critical. It's not only about having supervisory agents, but it's about providing the right context to the agents and the supervisors, I'm sure, so that they are doing the work that's appropriate for the organization. Talk a little bit about context and context graphs and how this fits together.
Sure. So first, let's talk about context. So from my experience, both working in very large organizations like, Salesforce and AWS, like when I went, from Salesforce to AWS, the cultural, even though the work was similar, right? I was still working as a lead product, as a product leader in Salesforce. I was working as a product leader at AWS, but the cultural context completely changed, right? And in Salesforce, there was like Ohana, and we started meetings with a lot of human interaction. I went to AWS, and all of a sudden, there's no Ohana, right? You write a memo, you walk into a room, you take out a red pen, and you start, interacting with the memo, not interacting with the human. So cultural context matters a lot. So let me give you a more concrete example. Have you ever been to Singapore?
I have.
Have you been to Malaysia?
Yeah, you got to cross a bridge to go from one to the other.
Exactly. Okay, so you've crossed the bridge. So what happens? How do you drive when you're in Singapore?
Very carefully, like a deterministic robot, making sure you have all the rules figured out exactly right.
Perfect. Now, same person in the same car crosses the bridge into Malaysia. Now, how do you drive?
Well, I would not do it because all the rules are gone, and it's a very different cultural expectation, I guess, for how you would drive.
But you've been in a car with somebody that when they've crossed the bridge.
Totally different.
Was it the same person in the same car?
Totally different. Totally different.
Totally different behavior. And what changed? Was it the person? Was it the car?
Yeah, well, you could say it's the culture of driving in these two organizations, of course, surrounded by rules and laws and regulation, but it is definitely a cultural thing as well.
Right. So, but I'm sure that Malaysia has rules and laws also on the books.
But the culture is not to obey them, right?
Right, but the norms are different, right?
Yes,
this is the key thing.
Yes.
If you were to read the laws in both countries, they are very similar.
I bet.
But in reality, the norms, the cultural norms are very different. What good looks like in Singapore for driving is very different than what good looks like in Malaysia for driving. So how do you learn? If you were to read the laws, right, you'd probably drive the same way in Malaysia that you drove in Singapore. So how do you know? How do you know when you cross the bridge that you're supposed to behave differently?
Well, you probably learn the culture from people who are already experienced in both those sides. That's probably the good way to do it. The less optimal way would probably be reinforcement learning. The first time you ever get pulled over in Singapore or have an accident in Malaysia, then you also learn, right?
Exactly. So perfect. Okay, so now we understand. Culture is not some wishy-washy vibes. How do I feel? Is there a barista making, lattes for the company, or is there a ping pong table? That is not organizational culture. Organizational culture tells you what good looks like in a particular organizational context. If you do not know the organizational culture, you will be producing slop, right? And slop in the case of driving is you drive like a mad person in Singapore, or you drive following all the rules and everybody is honking at you in Malaysia. Okay, so you are a sloppy driver in both of those contexts if you do not understand the culture. And so the same thing applies to AI agents. Because they do not know the norms of a particular organization, they produce what you think is slop. The only reason it is slop is because your expectations of what the agent should produce is different than what it produced. In order to go from AI slop or AI agent slop to something that's really great, that looks like great work in your organization, you have to align your agents to your organizational norms. You have to tell them what good looks like, and you have to feed those back as directives and knowledge back into the agents.
So specific in the context of an organization using the Wayfound app or system, who would be the users who would be charged with, the human users, I mean, who would be in charge with imparting the cultural context into the system? I assume you're not plugging into the brain of a chief culture officer or somebody like this. These are actually the operators of the company. But tell me more about that. Make it real.
Yeah. So remember, so when a new employee comes into an organization, they also need to learn the culture. How do they do that? By their frontline manager who knows both the culture of the company, but also the function, right? If you are missing either one of those pieces, the particular function or the company culture, you're going to get slop. And this is why we built a system where business users, subject matter experts could interact directly with the supervisor agent, train the supervisor agent on what good looks like for this particular function and for this particular agent. And then that supervisor enforces those rules and those high level expectations on the agents and closes the loop with shipping suggestions for improvement for the agent as well. So you need to make sure, one of the problems, again, when Chad and I were both looking at the same agent, he would look at the answers and say, this looks fine to me, because he didn't actually know, right? Like when you have engineers, this is why coding agents work so well, is because the people who have all the tools about good looks like are engineers. So when you have engineers producing code and they're being managed by people who are experts at producing code, no problem, super easy to do. But when you have the same engineers also building customer service agents, sales agents, marketing agents, finance agents, legal experts, agents, you cannot expect the engineers to be subject matter experts in sales and customer service and legal and finance. You just can't. So you have to give the actual power, explainability, and control to the subject matter experts. There is no way around it.
Really innovative concept, and we don't have time for it in this interview, but I would love to see how Wayfound works in the real world and how you do this.
I would love to show you.
So we'll take that offline, and others can find you at wayfound.ai and check that out. But that is really an amazing concept.
We're going to have one of our customers where we have a public-facing customer case study with, also speaking at the summit, Shubha Govil, this Chief Product Officer of Sauce Labs. They've been building lots of AI agents, completely transforming their organization with agents, and they've been a customer of Wayfound for over a year. So, yeah. So
very cool. I look forward to that. We're getting so many new speakers all the time, I can't keep track. So I will be watching for that. So maybe to circle back to sort of where we started when we talked about agents generally and the relationship between human workers and artificial agents. And I think I've read you talk about a multi-sapiens future.
That's right.
What, in plain English, what does that mean? What's your maybe medium or longer term vision for how these agents either human individual contributors or AI agents and human managers and AI supervisors, and all of this will end up working together, part of an organization? I know it's a big question, but there's a lot of thought going into that topic these days. What's your current perspective?
It's a big shift. So the reason I talk about the multi-sapiens future is because we need to stop thinking about this type of AI. We need to stop thinking about LLMs as tools. They are not tools, they are brains. And here, if anybody has not read Marvin Minsky's The Emotion Machine, absolutely, I would recommend taking a look at The Emotion Machine to understand how LLMs are different than previous AI systems and from software. And so taking the longer, kind of broader view on human history, we are at a turning point in the evolution of humanity when we are now in the midst of another species, another type of being, which is just as intelligent, if not more intelligent than us, that we are going to be working alongside. So this is not a tool. It's not a tool, right? It's another type of intelligence. This is why I say multi-sapiens. Homo sapiens working alongside AI sapiens, right? What does that look like? And how do we grapple with it if we get away from the tool versus, being type of framing, which we absolutely need to do in order to be successful? And so how this is evolving is, of course, one of the things that we're seeing is that we thought that AI agents were going to take away rote and routine tasks. It now looks like, based on recent research from Adobe, that they're much better at creative tasks, high-level reasoning tasks, executive function tasks.
100%.
So just FYI, if you are a business leader who doesn't believe in this, no problem. This argument will be solved for you because your company is going to go out of business. It doesn't matter what you believe at this point. Like, what you believe or what you don't believe is completely irrelevant. Empirically, LLMs, especially the high order reasoning LLMs, make better executive decisions than most human CEOs. And this, as the LLMs get better, it doesn't matter what you believe or what you don't believe. If you ignore the data, the market will answer the question for you. So this is an inevitability as far as I'm concerned. And so humans need to understand what are the things that we are really great at, because it's not thinking, it's not decision making, and it's not creativity.
So what is it?
We're great here. Okay, here's what I think. And, I'm sure that this list is going to get longer. Human relationships, right? Salespeople are probably going to be the last, human standing in the multi-sapiens workplace, because the ability to build human relationships and human relationships of trust and sitting down for dinner together and having a cocktail and doing the handshake, human relationships are really important, right, for getting deals done. And I do think that at some level, one of the reasons why humans will still be involved in getting deals done is because at the end of the day, AI agents can't be sued. And so there's always a human at the end of a lawsuit, in terms of just, corporate law, that if you need to sue somebody, you need a warm body, right, to sue. And so humans will always be involved in a lot of those decisions at the end of the day, because they're the ones who can get sued, not AI agents. All right. So I do think relationships and those types of things. I think also, to the point of decision-making, judgment and taste, right? Your ability to have good judgment, either that's good judgment on whether to take a recommendation of an AI agent or not. And of course, the third thing is to be partners for AI agents, to be their managers, right? Using your judgment to manage all of these fleets and swarms of AI agents that are emerging. So, those are my in enterprises that we know today, those are the skills that I think are going to be really important. I also think that humans have many other skills that are being completely underutilized in our current economic industrial setup that will flourish and reblossom because we are making the shift.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave that one on a cliffhanger because you and I could spend 2 more hours talking about this whole topic. What are
Yes.
humans good at, and what are they for, and how will they thrive in the years ahead? I think we're going to have some of that discussion at the summit in February.
Yep.
And to dive deeper into all these topics, of course, people can join you and us at the summit. I guess my last question is, what are you most looking forward to discussing at the summit? What do you think will be, I don't know, will be the outcome or the topics of some of these discussions that you want to focus on?
Yeah, I think what's really unique about the post-industrial summits is their ability to bring everything that we're seeing in enterprises into historical context, right? So the Post-Industrial Institute has been thinking about this for decades. They're not just like, oh, look, AI agents and autonomous organizations, right? They've been thinking about this for decades. And their view is a longer view on how this has evolved, from from the 1960s to the 1970s, what trajectory are we on, and what does this current move make? So I think really engaging deeply in not reinventing the wheel, but being with a group of very thoughtful people who've been thinking about this for decades and who are making real impact in real organizations, building on the decades of knowledge that they have, is one of the things that I'm always super excited to go to these summits and engage with the people who are having these deep conversations.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Tatyana. I am looking forward to speaking to you more at the summit and covering a wide range of these topics with a bunch of other amazing speakers. And for those that enjoyed this conversation, you can find out more about the summit and about the Post-Industrial Institute that's behind it at the links below. Again, thank you, Tatyana. Great discussion.
Thanks, Blaine.